Welcome, brothers and sisters. This is part 6 of 8 in the presentation on the signs of the coming of the Son of Man. If you've actually been watching this to this point, you have learned a lot, I'm sure. And I know the Lord will teach you a lot more as we go through the rest of these events and these signs. Now, a lot of people I've seen on the internet have talked about how the seventh seal has already been opened in the year 2000. And if you've gone through and you've watched the other presentations, you'll have seen all the events that will need to take place before the seventh seal is opened. All of these events haven't taken place, and so my conclusion I come to is the seventh seal hasn't been opened. Scriptures prove that. So, in Revelation chapter 8, we learn that the seventh seal is opened. And when he had opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven about the space of half an hour. Now, this silence in heaven is interesting. There's a cross-reference if you go to the Doctrine and Covenants in D&C 38, where it talks about silence in heaven. It says, "For all flesh is corrupted before me, and the powers of darkness prevail upon the earth, among the children of men, in the presence of all the hosts of heaven, which causeth silence to reign, and all eternity is pained, and the angels are waiting the great command to reap down the earth, to gather the tares that they may be burned, and behold, the enemy is combined." So this silence in heaven, we know, happens because of the powers of darkness that prevail upon the earth, the wickedness of men that is taking place. So this period of silence is going to be a period. It's not just actual just 30 minutes, but it'll be a period of time. And it will be a time where basically these angels will come to reap the earth, to gather the tares to be burned, and where the Lord will fulfill all his works. So it's important to understand this silence in heaven and why it's brought about and what happens during the silence. Now, this particular sign, I didn't really know. I mean, after all the study I had done, I didn't really know where this was to go. It's an interesting sign that will have to take place before the coming of the Messiah. And I believe that when we refer to this coming of the Messiah, I think it's referring to the coming of Christ to the Mount of Olives. So I think it has to happen before then. But basically it's this: "The Son of Man will not come this year, for I have seen the bow. The Lord gave me a sign and said, in the days of Noah I set a bow in the heavens, as a sign and token that in any year that the bow should be seen, the Lord would not come, but there should be seed time and harvest during that year. But whenever ye see the bow withdrawn, it shall be a token that there shall be famine, pestilence, and great distress among the nations, and that the coming of the Messiah is not far distant." I have seen rainbows this year, so I know that the Messiah is not going to come this year. We can be sure of that. There's also another sign that comes about at the opening of the seventh seal, and that's the sign of the coming of the Son of Man. And in Doctrine and Covenants in Matthew, it talks about this. "And immediately there shall appear a great sign in heaven, and all people shall see it together." And in Matthew, "And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven." This is what was said by Joseph Smith, as reported in the Wandle Mace autobiography. "Then will appear one grand sign of the Son of Man in heaven. But what will the world do? They will say, it is a planet, a comet, etc. But the Son of Man will come, as the sign of the coming of the Son of Man, which will be as the light of the morning cometh out of the east." So this is going to be a great sign that all people will see, and it will be in the heavens. And people will look at it and they'll think that it's a comet or a planet. Now, what is this sign? This sign is the city of Enoch coming back to earth to be reunited with both New Jerusalem and Old Jerusalem. This will be as the sun rises, so first we get little inklings of its light, until eventually the sun is bright at noonday and shining everywhere to where everyone will be able to see it. So it will take a period of time for this to occur, but all people will be able to see it, and this is a sign of the coming of the Son of Man. Now, after the seventh seal is opened and the silence in heaven begins, there is to be a time of tribulation, as prophesied by Daniel. He says, "At that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince, which standeth for the children of thy people. And there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation, even to that same time. And at that time thy people shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book. Many shall be purified and made white, and tried. But the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand." So before this time of trouble, we know that Michael, or Adam, must appear. This will occur at the Council of Adam-on-Diamond. And Daniel tells us that this time of trouble will last 1 week. And if we calculate the time of God and turn it into our time, we can be confident this is going to be a 7-year period of tribulation. So just as we had a 7-year period of tribulation in the land of Zion, there will be a 7-year period of tribulation in Jerusalem. And after the opening of the seventh seal, but prior to the angels sounding their trumpets, there will be a beginning of destruction, as prophesied both in Revelation and in the Doctrine and Covenants. It talks about an angel taking the censer, filling it with fire of the altar, and casting it into the earth. So there were voices, thunderings, lightnings, and an earthquake. And then after your testimony cometh wrath and indignation upon the people. For after your testimony cometh the testimony of earthquakes, that shall cause groanings in the midst of her. And men shall fall upon the ground, and shall not be able to stand. And also cometh the testimony of the voice of thunderings, and the voice of lightnings, and the voice of tempests, and the voice of the waves of the sea, heaving themselves beyond their bounds. So it will be a time of trouble, because it will be a time of destruction, great destruction. In the midst of this times of trouble, as Daniel says, the altar will be rebuilt and Jerusalem will be rebuilt, meaning that the temple in the Old Jerusalem will be reconstructed. We learn a lot about this from Ezekiel the prophet. He prophesies not only of the exact dimensions of this temple, but also the ordinances that will take place there, as well as what will happen once that temple is built. So this temple will be constructed with the help of the rod of Jesse, or King David. We also know that the temple will be able to accommodate blood sacrifices. And I'll talk more about this in just a moment. Now, not all the Jews, as I've described before, or the tribe of Judah, will have received the fullness of the gospel prior to this time. It will only be those that have accepted the gospel that will be starting to build up this temple. We also know that some of the 12,000 priests of Levi and of the seed of Zadok will be the ones to perform the sacrifices in the temple. Malachi actually talks about this in his book and prophecies, that the Lord will come to purify the sons of Levi so that they can offer an acceptable offering unto the Lord. And as far as the 144,000 go, the prophet Joseph Smith said that the 144,000 sealed are the priests who should be anointed to administer in the daily sacrifice. So a portion of these 144,000 will be called to go and to build up the temple in Old Jerusalem. And they will be the ones that perform the daily sacrifices in that temple. And as I said, they will be primarily of the tribe of Levi. Now, what's this daily sacrifice restored in the temple in Jerusalem? It is the sacrifice that was commanded to Moses in the law of Moses. And this is what is said by Joseph Fielding Smith. When these temples in the latter days are built, it is very likely that provision will be made for some ceremonies and ordinances which may be performed by the Aaronic priesthood, and a place provided where the sons of Levi may offer their offering in righteousness. This will have to be the case because all things are to be restored. There were ordinances performed in ancient Israel in the tabernacle when in the wilderness, and after it was established at Shiloh in the land of Canaan, and later in the temple built by Solomon. The Lord has informed us that this was the case and has said that in those edifices, ordinances for the people were performed. We are living in the dispensation of the fullness of times, into which all things are to be gathered, and all things are to be restored since the beginning. Even this earth is to be restored to the condition which prevailed before Adam's transgression. Now in the nature of things, the law of sacrifice will have to be restored, or all things which were decreed by the Lord would not be restored. It will be necessary, therefore, for the sons of Levi, who offered the blood sacrifices anciently in Israel, to offer such a sacrifice again to round out and complete this ordinance in this dispensation. Sacrifice by the shedding of blood was instituted in the days of Adam, and of necessity will have to be restored. The sacrifice of animals will be done to complete the restoration when the temple spoken of is built. At the beginning of the millennium, or in the restoration, blood sacrifices will be performed long enough to complete the fullness of the restoration in this dispensation. Afterwards, sacrifice will be of some other character. So that's from Joseph Fielding Smith, and I know that principle is true. So the next thing that will happen about in this time of trouble, this 7-year period, will be the rise of the Antichrist. John talks about him in Revelation 13. I've got a video also on the beasts of Revelation 13 that I've put out, so I recommend you go and watch that. I'll go over some of the same stuff here. But this is what we know about the Antichrist. We know that he comes up out of the earth, so he's one who has not yet come. He has 2 horns like a lamb, so he comes in the form of a lamb, meaning he's a counterfeit to Christ, who is the Lamb of God. And we know that he speaks as a dragon, and dragon as it's translated in Revelation is actually devil. And we see that he'll use deception. So he has this image of a lamb. He encourages the worship of the first beast, and he'll use miracles and signs to deceive. He will have the same powers as the first beast, the powers that Satan gives him. He has the power to cause the earth to worship the first beast and Satan. He has power to give life unto the image of the first beast. And he'll be someone that will have power through speaking. So he'll speak great things. He'll have signs and miracles that people will be deceived by. One of these wonders will be making fire come down from heaven. He'll speak to the earth and tell them to make an image to the first beast. He'll kill anyone that doesn't worship the image of the first beast. He'll cause everyone to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads. And he'll cause everyone to stop buying and selling without the mark, the name of the beast, or the number of the first beast's name. So he is going to be a powerful figure. Joseph Smith said this: "The beast John saw was an actual beast, and an actual intelligent being gives him his power and his seat and great authority. It was not to represent a beast in heaven. It was an angel in heaven who has power in the last days to do a work." So we know that this intelligent being, Satan, will give this Antichrist power, and we know that this Antichrist was an angel in heaven who has power to do work in the last days. So it will be an actual man that will come forth. He'll be a false prophet that will create miracles and deceive people that have received the mark of the beast. So the second beast that's mentioned in Revelation 13 is actually the Antichrist. He'll be a false prophet, a false Christ that will deceive many through the signs that he gives. We know also that he is the one who is yet to come, as spoken of by John in Revelation. And during the reign of this Antichrist, this is what's going to happen. He'll speak great words against the Most High. He'll wear out or make war with the saints of the Most High. He'll think to change times and laws. He'll reign for a period of 3.5 years. He'll cause the sanctuary to be polluted, and he will take away the daily sacrifice. He'll exalt himself against God, and he'll speak marvelous things or great things against God and his people. So this is a timeline that Daniel gives us of specific days for certain events to happen relative to the temple in Jerusalem in the last days. So first we know that the temple does need to be constructed, and the daily sacrifices, they need to be restored. About the same time that the Antichrist comes about, the daily sacrifice will be taken away. We know that there will be a period of about 1,290 days between when the daily sacrifice is taken away and the abomination that maketh desolate is set up in Jerusalem is under siege. There'll be a period of 1,335 days from when the daily sacrifice is taken away to when the chosen third remnant or third part of people will remain in Jerusalem. And Daniel says, "Blessed is he that waiteth," in referring to these people. And then finally we know it'll be 2,300 days between when the daily sacrifice is taken away and when the temple is fully cleansed. So this Daniel's timeline kind of gives us an idea of how long the Antichrist is going to reign and what other events, like how we will place the events that are going to happen in the correct order and at the correct time. So, now we come to the 7 angels with 7 trumpets. This is what Orson Pratt said about these angels and trumpets. "And the time will come when the 7 angels, having the 7 last trumpets, will sound their trumps literally, and the sound thereof will be heard among the nations, just preparatory to the coming of the Son of Man." And he's referring here to the coming on the Mount of Olives. "And all the judgments foretold by John, which are to succeed the sound of each of the 7 trumpets, will be fulfilled literally upon the earth in their times and seasons." So these trumpet soundings will be heard literally, and the things that are prophesied to take place will also happen literally. But before these 7 trumpets sound and the destruction start, there will be 1 trumpet sounding the signal of the Lord's final appearance. And this does occur before the 7 angels sound their trumpets. And this is in Doctrine and Covenants 88:94. And I won't read this, but all nations will hear this trumpet. So the first angel. First angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire mingled with blood, and they were cast upon the earth. And the third part of trees was burnt up, and all green grass was burnt up. And the first went and poured out his vial upon the earth. And there fell a noisome and grievous sore upon the men which had the mark of the beast, and upon them which worshipped his image. Therefore shall her plagues come in one day, death and mourning and famine. And she shall be utterly burned with fire, for strong is the Lord God who judgeth her. Now, each of these angels and their trumpets are talked about in Revelation. They're also talked about in the 88th section of the Doctrine and Covenants. So as I go through this, I'll talk about first what happens or what's described by John in Revelation, and then I'll talk about the what's described in Doctrine and Covenants 88. So we know that the first angel, when this occurs, the saints that are upon the earth who are alive shall be quickened and caught up to meet him. And they who have slept in their graves shall come forth, for their graves shall be opened, and they also shall be caught up to meet him in the midst of the pillar of heaven. They are Christ's, the firstfruits, they who shall descend with him first, and they who are on the earth and in their graves, who are first caught up to meet him. And all this by the voice of the sounding of the trump of the angel of God. So the Doctrine and Covenants gives us to understand that this is going to be the morning of the first resurrection. So at the sounding of this trump, there will begin a resurrection for those who will inherit the celestial kingdom in the future. And we know what particular saints and which people will be included in this resurrection here. Now the second angel. The second angel sounded, and as it were, a great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea, and the third part of the sea became blood. And the third part of the creatures which were in the sea and had life died, and the third part of the ships were destroyed. And the second angel poured out his vial upon the sea, and it became as the blood of a dead man, and every living soul died in the sea. And this is what Doctrine and Covenants 88 says. And after this another angel shall sound, which is the second trump. And then cometh the redemption of those who are Christ's at his coming, who have received their part in that prison which is prepared for them, that they might receive the gospel and be judged according to men in the flesh. Now, this second trump is also talked about in Mosiah 26 and D&C 76. In Mosiah it talks about, it shall come to pass that when the second trump shall sound, then shall they that never knew me come forth and shall stand before me. Doctrine and Covenants 76, these are they who received not the gospel of Christ, neither the testimony of Jesus. So at the sounding of the second trump, this is the afternoon of the first resurrection, and it will be the resurrection of those who will inherit the celestial kingdom. The third angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp. And it fell upon the third part of the rivers, and upon the fountains of waters. And the name of the star is called Wormwood, and the third part of the waters became wormwood. And many men died of the waters, because they were made bitter. And the third angel poured out his vial upon the rivers and fountains of water, and they became blood. And in D&C 88, and again another trump shall sound, which is the third trump. And then come the spirits of men who are to be judged, and are found under condemnation. And these are the rest of the dead, and they live not again until 1,000 years are ended, neither again until the end of the earth. So these people are the ones that will inherit a celestial kingdom, and they won't actually be resurrected until after the millennium. This is referred to as the second resurrection. And the fourth angel sounded, and the third part of the sun was smitten, and the third part of the moon, and the third part of the stars, so as the third part of them was darkened. And the day shone not for a third part of it, and the night likewise. And the fourth angel poured out his vial upon the sun, and power was given unto him to scorch men with fire. And men were scorched with great heat, and blasphemed the name of God, which hath power over these plagues, and they repented not to give him glory. And in D&C 88, and another trump shall sound, which is the fourth trump, saying, There are found among those who are to remain until that great and last day, even the end, who shall remain filthy still. So this will include those who are resurrected, but do not inherit a kingdom of glory. And this is termed the final resurrection. This also will take place after the end of the millennium, after the battle of Gog and Magog, after Satan is cast into the great pit, and when the earth receives its celestial glory.